Hey, this is Jonathan Gilliam. Happy Monday, and I'm going to give you your tasking for the day. Hopefully, you'll take this throughout the week, really. And this isn't just for conservatives, this is for liberals as well. I want you to think about what frustrates you the most right now over the past month or so. Is it the lockdown? You can't really go places that you want to go. Is it wearing the mask and you're told how you'll protect yourself from the virus? Maybe it's the fact that you can't go to the beach and it's summer and it's already starting to approach winter. Or maybe you can't go on vacation because things are locked down in states. Maybe you had a loved one that was elderly and they were in a clinic getting rehabilitation, and a governor, mostly Democrats, by the way, sent COVID patients into that clinic and killed them. Whatever it is that you're feeling right now, 100%, I want you to consider this isn't even close what it would be like to be in a socialist/communist country. Not even close. I want you to consider that, and let's start the show. This is Jonathan Gilliam back on the Experts Podcast. The truth has arrived. Happy Monday. Now, as always, the media cycle is really just repetition, as always. And I was looking, over the headlines. And if you're listening to this Monday morning, I'm going to be in Albany today for a rally against Governor Cuomo, speaking out against him for not just the fact that he put COVID patients in with elderly and killed them, along with several other Democrat governors, but the fact that he's really a communist, this guy. And as I tried to make, kind of spur you to consider at the beginning of the show with your tasking, you've got to understand who these people are and what they're all about. Now, communism is the hot word now. Everybody from the left themselves are using it to people that are protesting in Portland, Antifa, all these people, they're all proud to say that they're communists now. So many high school students and college students, they're all calling themselves, communists. Some of them call themselves socialists, but the end all be all is they believe in the same thing, primarily a bigger government, which is the strangest thing ever when you live in a free country, that you would want a bigger, more powerful government. And they're really stupid because they're not even looking at history. But anyway, when we look at these people, these Democrats, and again, if you're liberal and you're listening to this show, you need to cast aside your anger and stop with the nonsense of believing in the Democrat Party. I hammer the Republican Party as well. I don't believe in the two-party system. The fact is, the Republican Party is full of backstabbing rhinos. I don't even want to use the term rhino. It's too political. They're backstabbing liars is what they are. And I'm talking about the political, the wonks in D.C., meaning the state and local government people that just never go away. And quite frankly, these people would vote or would run for office no matter what party there was. They're going to find a way to get into political office. That's their main thing. Just like some, kid who I saw on Fox News, the headline was, a kid who wants to be Navy SEAL starts by serving veterans this way. Well, listen, great that he wants to be a Navy SEAL, okay? But why does that have to be a news story? It should be like it used to be. Keep your mouth shut. You're not, I used to go on Twitter and just hammer some of these people. They'd be like future Navy SEAL, yada, yada. They're like high school grads or in college. Well, listen, you're not a Navy SEAL until you're a Navy SEAL. Okay. That's it. You know how many people show up to BUD/S and want to be a SEAL and they can't even make it through, 6 months of training because it's tough. Now, good for the kid that he wants to do something with his life. That's cool, but it's not headline worthy because you don't want to lead people into dreaming and that's it. They need to be able to accomplish things. But the fact is, and reason I'm even going down that road is that people are so caught up in headlines and what they want to be, and then they're outraged at this or that. They don't even understand what's happening. And the buzzword of the day is communism or socialism. I've been screaming that for years, over 6 years, hosting radio. I left the FBI in 2013 and immediately saw what was going on once I got out of service. It just hit me in the face. Of course, in 2013, 2014, things started to change a little bit as well. But it became very apparent very quickly what was going on. And when we look at Cuomo and we look at these different leftist politicians and when we look at the Republican Party, what we're looking at is we're looking at people, and I guess the point I was trying to make with that kid earlier, what I was saying was that people, they want to strive to be a pro football player or a pro basketball player, or I want to be an actor, I want to be a singer, or I want to be an engineer. There are people who literally, that's their goal, is to be a politician. And you got to ask yourself, why? Why say politician? Do they want to be a leader? Listen, the majority of them, it's a lie. They're not leaders in anything. They are just simply people who thrive, just like many actors, on the narcissistic energy that they get from being in a position where they are powerful. Has nothing to do with whether or not they can lead. So that's why I was bringing up the kid, because it's a dream for the kid. It's not even reality. It's not reality until you make it through that. And yet there's people who their goal is to be in politics, just like people say they want to be a SEAL or they want to be an actor. It's all about ego. And the worst thing about, whether you want to be a SEAL or not is you have to actually try to make it. To be an actor or not, you got to somehow make a break. But with a politician, you have to lie or you have to have good credentials to get in. Quite frankly, the majority of people up there lie. That's what a campaign is. Make yourself look as great as possible, like you're going to do amazing things. And most of them do nothing, especially now that so many are communist or they're just worthless. Are there good Republican politicians? There's great leaders that are in the Republican Party because there is no other party they can cling to get elected. Yes. Are there good leaders in the Democrat Party? Listen, I'm going to say this, and it's not a biased conservative, liberal, Republican versus Democrat statement. To me, there are no great leaders in the Democrat Party, and not one. And I'll tell you why. Because they are knowingly taking the position of backing a political party that is wanting to destroy this country. And I say the same thing to people who are conservative. Remember, conservative, whether you guys realize this or not, especially the ones who are, all up in arms, who are brainwashed on the left, you think that the conservative stands for judgmental or big government or, capitalism. Conservative simply means slow to change, right? Don't fix it if it ain't broken. Economic prosperity. Loving your country, being the best that you can be. That's what I look at when I look at conservative. Not having to lean on other people to help you make it. And really what it really boils down to is being a realist. Conservatives are realists. They look at a problem, they say it's broken, we need to fix it. This is the best way to fix it. Or it's not broken, let's stop, let's leave it alone. Or when it comes to rights, these are God-given rights. Do they belong to everybody? Let's make sure that they do. The left is nothing like that. And the people that were are gone. And you people that follow the Democrat Party, you're either brainwashed or you're buying into a lie. And you're willing to do that. I can't support that. So when we look at people, for instance, like We've had a whole host like de Blasio or Bernie Sanders, people who have close relationships with the Communist Party or have actually been a part of the Communist Party. They still are, but in the past, were actually literally working out loud for the Communist Party. De Blasio is one of those. Bernie Sanders is one of those. When we look at, for instance, the person that Joe Biden is on his short list, right? He's got several different people on his short list. There's no doubt about that. But when we look at the one person in particular that keeps popping up, Karen Bass, when I started looking into her, it's the same as all the rest. She went and worked in Cuba in the 70s and went and saw several speeches by Fidel Castro. She's been on record since then multiple times speaking about how much she really respects the Castro regime. She's gone and spoke with Scientology. This is what's really weird. Scientology, which is, flat out weird. They were created by if you watch the documentaries on this guy, L. Ron Hubbard, narcissist, clinical narcissist, so bad that he literally, it was, the only difference between him and Charles Manson was that, to my knowledge, the Church of Scientology hasn't gone around and committed mass murder. But as far as like blindly following people, it doesn't matter if it's Jim Jones or Charles Manson or L. Ron Hubbard. It's the same weirdness. And she goes on, Karen Bass, in speeches talking about, in front of the Church of Scientology, talking about how impressed she is with their equality for all. But I've never heard one speech where this woman is saying anything about the Constitution and the Founding Fathers and how, because those men wrote the Constitution the way that they did, that the government formed the way it did, and that freedom formed the way it did, and true equal rights were bestowed upon all men and women. She never mentions that stuff. I've never heard her in a speech talk about the Founding Fathers and how amazing they are. But yet she'll go and she will commend the actions of a dictator, a communist dictator named Fidel Castro and his regime. See, this is what I'm going to go speak about tomorrow when I go to Albany. Because this is the same way that Cuomo and Whitmer in Michigan, or Wolf in Pennsylvania, or the governor of New Jersey. Someone anywhere. You got Gavin Newsom in California. You got de Blasio, the mayor in New York, and you have the mayor of Los Angeles, and all these people. If you look at the way that they work and the way that they function, it's as if you, the listeners, are children, and you better eat your peas. You will have to eat your broccoli. Chicken wings are not a dinner for you. You don't know how to take care of yourself and keep from getting a virus, or you're not capable of making a choice to quarantine yourself if you're sick. They never talk to people and say, we really need to be the best that we can be. And I'm relying on you to make choices like a mature adult. If you don't feel good, quarantine yourself. What good does it matter? What good is it that if you get a test and the state says you're quarantined, but you don't quarantine, right? But beyond all this, I know there's people out there listening right now that are chomping the bit because I'm talking about the virus as though it's real. I got news for you. It is real. But the extent at which it's real, I have no idea. Remember, I had the virus in April. The way I caught the virus was from someone who was in an elderly clinic for 2 weeks getting rehab after neck surgery. And because of Cuomo, he mandated they start putting COVID positive patients in the clinics. And that's how they got it. And then when I assisted them, because they collapsed because they were released with COVID, not telling anyone, I got infected, and so did the rest of their family. This is why we can't tell the reality of what actually is happening with this virus. But this is also the level of incompetence that you get when it comes to communist type of leadership. And I don't know how to convince people that, one, how dangerous this leadership actually is, and two, the fact that these are the people that are running against President Trump, who is the only politician in a position of power to hold them back. Now, it doesn't mean that the people can't hold them back, because we can, but will we? There's no congressman, singular, or congresswoman that's going to stop this. Now, if all the congressmen and women that were claimed to be conservative stood together and said no more, or we're going to war, you would see a big change, potentially. But that's not going to happen. Senators, not going to happen. Supreme Court, not going to happen. They're all divided along whether or not they are conservative or liberal, and I'm not talking about the way we define it, the way I defined it earlier. They're beholden to the Republican and the Democrat parties. That's why they're so extreme. I can't say enough to convince people about the reality of what is happening and how fast it's happening. When you look at the fact that Cuomo, May 25th is, March 25th is when his executive order was passed and intended to supposedly, quote unquote, ease the burden on hospitals dealing with the COVID virus at that point in time. Now, when I look at this is the number of deaths. Okay, there's two different graphs that you got to look at. One is deaths, and one is infections. And when we look at overall in the United States, it wasn't just Cuomo that did this. There was at least 5, maybe 8 governors. I'm not exactly sure, but I know in Florida, for instance, they started and then they stopped it immediately. They didn't put COVID patients in with the elderly. They stopped it immediately. This is a Democrat Party organized tactic. I don't know why they did it, but to me, it's very strange that you would, and I was having this discussion the other day, that you think that somebody would say, maybe it's not such a good idea that we put COVID positive patients with elderly because they're the most susceptible to this virus. Well, all of these governors said that. They all said in their press conferences before the spike in April, they all said that we had to be extremely careful with elderly patients because they were the most susceptible. And at that point in time, they were saying that young people weren't susceptible at all. They said it, and then they put them in there and killed over 60,000 people. And when you look at the graph, which I'm looking at right now, starting at around, it started to flourish a little bit on its own about March 16th. Started to go up a little bit. But March 24th to March 26th, it started to go up rapidly. And then, if you count 7 days from there, from March 25th, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, April 1st and April 2nd, it is unbelievable how fast it goes up. It just takes a leap skyward. And then when Cuomo reversed, I'm using Cuomo as the measuring stick for these other governors, because they all reacted the same way. They all put COVID patients in the same time. They all pulled them out the same time. Although some left them in there. But he started pulling them out and reversed himself on May 10th, right? So for a whole month, basically, from March 25th through, May 10th, more or less, okay? So I'm looking at the chart, May 10th. Lo and behold, that is when it went up, and that's when it started to come down. And when we look at the death rate now, it's not even close to being what it was for that period of time. However, when we look at when the rate started to go back up, well, remember, George Floyd was killed May 25th. And for almost the solid month of June, protests were happening. And what do you know? The beginning of July, the rate starts going back up of death from COVID. Wow. Surprise, surprise. The Democrats are responsible for the deaths from March 25th until it started to go down and actually went all the way down right around in May. And then they're also responsible for these protests, which were riots and still are. Of course, you're not hearing any of this correlation. Even from Dr. Fauci, who wouldn't admit in front of Congress the other day that, yes, protests have most likely caused massive increase in the virus. Now, here's the other thing. This goes right along with it, okay? Here's the other thing. From March 25th, right, as I said, through May 10th, that's when Cuomo, and we're using him as a litmus test for all these other idiots out there that are Democrat governors, from March 25th until, I'd say, the first quarter of May, that is when we had just a huge spike in deaths, okay? Well, it's also when we had a huge spike in cases. And then that leveled out the same time that the deaths leveled out, right around in the middle of May. And then, crazy as it sounds, the whole month of June, you had all these protests. And then what do you get? You get this massive curve, even bigger than it's ever been in the United States. And yet still no one is correlating this in the news with the protests. They say that you can only have 50 people in Nevada, for instance, in church, but you can have 50% of the people in a casino. What sense does that make? You could have 2,000, 4,000 people. They say, well, on average, we have 10,000 people in here a night, so we can have 5,000. And the government's like, oh, okay, that's cool. Meanwhile, the church, no, you can only have 50 because. Now, when I look at these two graphs on top of each other, the other thing I notice is that from March 25th to the middle of May, we had this huge uptick in deaths and in cases of positive COVID patients. Then it started to go down, right? Because they stopped putting the elderly sick in with the elderly clinics and killing all these people. We're talking over 60,000 people, right? Now, here's the thing that is very telling for me, and nobody's laying these on top of each other. If we look between March and May at the COVID positive patients versus the number of people with COVID, we see that it's, both are very high at that point in time. And then they both go down at the same time. But here's what's different. As all these protests unfolded, these riots by the left that were supported by the Democrats, they didn't stop any of them. In fact, de Blasio goes on a record saying that we have to allow this to happen. Meanwhile, he's not even letting 5 people eat outside at a restaurant. So they allow this to happen. And now what you see is that the curve for patients that are positive with coronavirus goes sky high, but the death toll does not. The death toll has climbed as the number of people get it, but the death toll has done nothing close to what it did in March and May. That's because, folks, the powers that be in the communist thinking don't give a shit about you and me and elderly people. And what they do, they put positive patients in with the most susceptible people. And then they allowed the protest and encouraged the protest, and in many circumstances participated in the protests. But the difference is now they got caught putting COVID positive patients in with the elderly. So they didn't repeat that. And so now you have a spike in cases, but not a spike in deaths. Not to the extreme where it was before. Not where these two different graphs measured up. And what does that tell us? It tells us that the virus is not as deadly as they are continuing to allude to. I saw a thing the other day saying that 70% of all COVID patients have heart damage. How do they, listen, I know a dozen people who've had COVID. None of them had their hearts checked. None of them. Are they just checking people who died? I mean, in that case, are they looking at the fact that maybe they had other conditions? Are they adding that into the equation? Are they doing a study with 50 people? Is it only people who died? Because everybody I know has had no problems with their heart, and they have not been tested. The reason I'm bringing this up, because I've talked a lot about COVID on this show, is that, I'm speaking directly to the people who do not realize what's happening. And to those of you that do and aren't taking action, something has to change. They have to start taking action. Let's just take a break for a second. I'm going to come right back. I'm going to tell you about what's happening today in Albany. We'll be right back. Now, I know you guys hear me talk about my books all the time on this show, but I have to tell you, if you have not ordered Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, right now is the time when you should be doing that. Honestly, look around. Is anything getting safer in this country? I don't think so. And you need to start taking responsibility for your safety. You may not have law enforcement showing up at your place. So now is the time when you need to assess your threats. Now, the way you do that, the way you assess your threats, is you read Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, and you apply what I teach you in that book. The first half of the book is set up to show you how attackers look at you, why they would attack, who would attack, when it would happen, where it would happen, and how it would be carried out. You divide your life into sectors, and basically, it's not rocket science. You look at yourself from their point of view. I just show you how they do it. The second half of the book shows you how to take what you've learned and then build better defenses, awareness, plans of action, and strategies to mitigate these threats of attack. Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival. There's 2 workbooks that go with it that you can order after that and actually apply it. Workbook number 1 is the Threat Assessment Workbook, and workbook number 2 is the Defense Assessment Workbook. So they go right along with the book. The first one is like the first half of Sheep No More. The second one is like the second half. And then, because I just didn't think that was enough for you to secure your home, I came up with a children's book with Danielle Kreiner, who did the illustration of it. We put safety, communication, and awareness lessons all in the pictures. It's called The Adventures of Team Little Bigs, a parent's book for children. And why is it a parent's book for children? Because you go to teamlittlebigs.com and get the lesson plans, hand the book of pictures to your child, and then you teach them 2 to 8 on awareness, communication, and safety. Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival. It's 2 workbooks, and The Adventures of Team Little Bigs, a parent's book for children. This is how you secure your homeland. I'm driving all the way to Albany from New York, from lower New York. And I'm going to go up there and I'm going to speak to people and awaken them and let them realize exactly what's happening with this movement of the Communist Party. But how many of you have done nothing? I see so many of you comment on things that I say on Facebook or on Twitter or on LinkedIn, and you offer your critique of what I may say. But I don't see any of you doing anything to coordinate against the Communist Party. And many of you have served in official capacity. But yet you have no solution. You just say, well, we're not there yet. It's probably not going to happen. We're not going to go into civil war. I got news for you. We're already there. And your life is already being affected by stupid, incompetent decisions and people who have a leftist agenda. And if you think being a registered Democrat is going to keep you from being affected in the future, that, oh, listen, those conservatives, that they think that they support Trump and they support a rapist or, whatever they're wanting to say. And they think, oh, that's bad and he's bad and I don't want to be friends with him anymore. Let me tell you something, folks. Those of you that support the Democrat Party and you elect these people in the office, I will absolutely, if I see you, will say, I told you so. And it is on you. I don't have to take any credit for that. And I'm doing my part. What are you doing? What are you doing? Why aren't people getting together en masse? The founding fathers created this country in such a way as that you would have the power. And you think because government says no or because police say no, that you cannot do anything. That's what you think. I'm going to get in trouble. Look what's happening in Portland. People who don't care about this country, people who say they're communists, people who teach your children, by the way, many teachers out there, they are destroying that city. Look what happened in Seattle. They took over an entire neighborhood of businesses and homes, and they occupied it and kicked the police out. Now, why am I bringing that up? Because you, regardless of whether you're liberal or you are conservative, you better start standing together, because even your liberal decisions won't matter if this goes further. Oh, well, you're just overreacting. No, I'm not. It's clear. If you don't get it now, you're not going to get it. You're going to be led onto a train and off to a concentration camp, just like in World War II. You're not going to get it. But the point I'm trying to make is, we don't want to get in trouble. Well, guess what? If there's 10,000 of you, you won't get in trouble. But you all have to start doing something. You have to start standing together somehow, some way. If you think, like so many of you, well, you just wait. The conservatives are the ones with the guns. Yeah, well, you've never trained together. Yeah, well, they don't know what's going to hit them because we'll stand together. They're standing together by the thousands. They have people, big money donors, who are busing them from city to city. They are fighting against federal agents in Portland, Oregon, and they are occupying the space around where those officers are being held up in buildings. Trust me, if those people in Portland decide to pick up guns and start shooting it out, there's enough of them there where they're going to kill probably the majority of those officers there. They just haven't made that commitment yet. And our officers are nobody's looking at this as insurrection. They're only looking at those people as, well, they want to protest. They need to protest because Black Lives Matter and because, they've been treated bad by the police. These are Trump Gestapo. No, that's not true. Gestapo, trust me, if this was a Gestapo, all those people would be dead. There'd be dogs out there eating them like crazy, water cannons, people shot. You'd never see them again. They would disappear. One of my instructors from the University of Arkansas, Jaime Malmude, he was the prosecutor that prosecuted in Argentina their own military. It was the first time in modern history that a country had prosecuted their own military for war crimes. Most of you probably don't even remember what was happening in Argentina with a dictator. Well, the fact is, if Trump considered himself a dictator and those officers were considered his henchmen, this would be a whole different story, You better be glad that Trump's in office and not, well, Joe Biden's not going to last in office. And that's something I'm going to talk about in just a second. But you better be glad somebody from the left is not. Hillary Clinton was in the office and it was the other way around, and these protests were happening, there'd be dead people in the street. Now, you better start realizing this. And when I talk about the COVID, when I talk about what these governors are doing, when I'm talking about these protests, if you don't see a picture of what's actually happening in this country, you better listen. Again, I'm gonna speak directly to the people, the leftists in this country. If you're young and you're listening to this, or if you're somebody who says, I'm a Democrat, you had better listen to what I'm saying, okay? If you, and I mean this sincerely, if I told you, look at the stars, and I explained to you how planets orbit, and I explained to you what they've discovered throughout the years about how when one planet is trailing the other, but they're in different orbits, one's closer to the other, one's moving faster, how they will change, and it may appear to look like they're doing this thing, but they're actually doing something else. And then when I explain to you how that works, you say, oh, okay, I get it. Like every night I go out and I look up and I have a little app that tells me when the space station's going to go over. If you looked at that app and then you said, okay, the space station just went over here, it's going to come back over, but you don't understand their orbit, you may not realize it's not going to come straight back in the way that it was, because the orbit is, the orbit's not changing, but it's not on a fixed orbit where it's going around the same circle. The circle kind of alters every time it goes around the planet. If you didn't know that, you'd stare up in the sky every night and think, okay, obviously it's going to be here. But if I explain to you the pattern of what's happening, you'll say, now I get it. Now I see what's happening here. So to you liberals, how do you not see the pattern of what's going on? How do you not see that what is happening with these Democrats who've killed these elderly and increased the death rate, increased the exposure? Remember, I got infected, as did all the other people that I know, not from the elderly clinic, but by somebody who was infected in the elderly clinic and then released. At the same time, they wouldn't let this family go and visit their father. They wouldn't let them go visit their grandmother that was in an elderly clinic. Why? Because the governor said, you can't go in there. You may spread COVID inside there. At the exact same time, he was putting COVID positive patients in there. Do you not see what's happening? They are allowing protests to happen that have nothing to do with George Floyd or Black Lives. None of them are going in. All those people that are tearing down Portland, none of them have gone into the inner city and done anything. None of them. And yet you fail to see the pattern of what's happening. I am at odds. I cannot figure out how you don't see this. And I'm telling you, I'm explaining it to you. You better stop, take a second, and look at what's going on. Look at the fact that in Portland, this is being reported in the New York Post, protesters in Portland burned the American flag. Okay, we're used to that. And the Bible. Why would they burn the Bible? Because they want to destroy everything this country is about. Look at Black Lives Matter. I'm still talking to the liberals out there. Look at Black Lives Matter. Look at the people who founded it. They are communists. Many of them believe, and they're on record saying that they believe white people are not evolved as much as black people. That's exactly what they believed in Japan prior to World War II. Do you not see the pattern here? America has given you the ability to, if you are black, if it wasn't for America, I can guarantee you black people would still be enslaved. So would white people. So would every other group. But because the Constitution was written the way it was, those things were eventually forced to change inside this country, and it affected the rest of the world. That is a pattern that you can see. And many of you will even deny that now. But yet they go and they burn the American flag because they're wanting you to hate it. And then they burn the Bible because the Bible preaches exactly opposite of what the Communist Party preaches. They don't believe in the family unit. They believe in the commune. That's worked out great, hasn't it? Throughout history, just great. When we look at what they're reporting in the news and stupid headlines from MSN saying Trump plans emergency to stay in office, says top Democrat. Let's just look at who that top Democrat is. House Majority Whip James Clyburn, right? This is not a factual headline. I'm sorry, that was Bloomberg that's reporting. This is Bloomberg, okay? A business freaking publication. Bloomberg is saying Trump plans emergency to stay in office. And then under that, top Democrat says, so that's hearsay and that's somebody's opinion. It's not fact, but yet that's been being reported as fact. The only fact is that guy said it. There's no proof of that. But that guy, Clyburn, also said that federal agents in Portland are the same as Nazi Gestapo police. And then when he was confronted about saying it, this is the type of nonsense that this guy says. Let me scroll down here and see where I can find it. Well, here, I mean, just forget about the quote. Listen to what he says in his own words.
This president and this attorney general seem to be doing everything they possibly can to impose Gestapo activities in local communities, and that.
This guy is the majority whip in the House. And then he goes on later and says that he didn't say that. He says that, well, I might have said something to that, but I don't think that I would normally say something like that. He's a liar. And yet people will vote him into office. And that's why I'm almost at my wit's end, because now I'm going to talk to conservatives. You all need to start taking the bull by the horns. And we should start this Monday out in a positive note, in a confident note, saying we're not going to take it anymore. Remember, and here's another thing. If you're on Facebook, if you're on Twitter, I'm not a fan of Parler. I am a fan of Connect Zing. You need to be getting profiles on both of those so that you can still have a voice, because there's a good chance you are going to be cut out eventually from Twitter, from Facebook. I'm not real sure about Parler. There's all kinds of stuff, rumors out there about him, but Connect Zing is one that I know is going to be around because Drago, my good buddy who's a Navy SEAL, who was a Polish citizen who was imprisoned for 3 years for being a part of the Freedom Underground, eventually got out and came to the United States, became an American citizen and a Navy SEAL for 20 years. He's the one who's starting Connect Zing. I don't think that Drago is going to give in to the left. But the reason I'm saying this is you still have to have a voice in some way to communicate. So you better start just getting profiles on all these. Even if you don't use them, have the profiles in case it happens. Because you all have about 90, I don't know exactly sure, but it's around 90 days left before the elections. I myself have been saying that I think the election should be 3 days long. The first day should be for elderly only. The next 2 days should be for people so that long lines don't appear, so that people can get in there and vote. You should have to have an ID. Police should guard the ballot boxes to make sure that, and yeah, I do believe we should use paper ballot boxes. Police should guard them to make sure that they are counted and protected, and the National Guard should be activated and be protecting the perimeter where nobody except for voters are coming in. There's no reason to have mail-in ballots. It can be corrupted too easily. The union for the post office is so far left, it's right there with the teachers' unions. So we can't trust them. But see, you all need to realize your life is going to change in 90 some days if President Trump does not get elected. Your life will change. And it's probably going to change quite rapidly, because all these foolish things like the Green New Deal and all these other things that are going to suck your taxes away and your freedoms, you think it's bad now? You wait till next year if Trump doesn't get elected. And then you go and say, Black Lives Matter is ran by communists. There's a good chance you'll go to jail for that. Mark my words on it. You better start organizing, and you better start realizing if you don't want to get in trouble for standing up to the government, you better start standing up in massive numbers. And if you're a cop, you better start realizing you are being used. And if you're a sheriff or a chief of police, you better, and you see what's going on, you better start getting ready and devising a plan. Because your authority can be whipped right out from under you, just like a tablecloth underneath dishes. You'll be left standing with no authority. And you think I'm making stuff up. You think I'm going too far. Trust me, all you tech geeks, all you leftists out there in Silicon Valley, that same tablecloth is going to be whipped right out from under you as well. Because if these people get into office, you are going to be one of the first that they go after and shut down. Trust me on that. They're not going to allow this stuff to go on. The censorship is going to go out of control. And it's been proven that the people who understand the Constitution will not get up and rise up. It's been proven for over 2 years of active stuff, and really 4 years, because Trump's been inundated constantly. I haven't seen anybody protesting CNN and even Fox News saying, why are you reporting this stuff? It's not true. Where are the conservatives standing up, blocking people from going to work in those news agencies? Listen, I think that's good. I'm gonna call it there. And I hope that this resonates with you. I sound aggravated because I am. Because it's getting closer to time, folks. It's getting closer to the point where you're not going to have a choice. And I don't want to see that happen to this country that I serve and that I still serve. If you're in Albany today, make sure that you come out and take part in this event if you can, if you're listening to this early enough. And it's the Freedom Rally. It's Monday, August 3rd. That's when you're going to listen to this in Albany, New York. And come on out. It's 10 a.m. at Academy Park, 1 Academy Park, Albany, New York. And start at 10 a.m., 11 a.m. There's going to be a lap around the Capitol, march around the Capitol building and State Street. And then I'll be speaking amongst several other people that are going to be speaking out there. Come on out, support us, support yourself, and stand against the communists. You actually have the ability in New York to stand against the communists today. So if you're listening to this and you live close, come on down. And if you don't, you need to start considering what I said at the beginning of this show. You need to start realizing that everything you're feeling right now as far as oppression goes, it's going to be made 10 times worse starting in January if the president does not win, and if elections are allowed to go through with these mail-in ballots. Now, I want to reiterate this, and I want it clear. You live in the United States of America, a country where you are free to choose who you vote for. Do you like this Democrat who supports communism? Do you like this Republican who's full of inaction? Or do you want a leader like the president who actually cares about the people and follows up on his promises? You're free to love who you want, hate who you want, say what you want, but you are literally giving that freedom away either through supporting the Communist Democrat Party or choosing inaction not to stand up against rhinos and leftists. You need to make a choice today. Are you going to sit on your rear? Are you going to support a Democrat Party? Or are you going to stand for freedom? I'm Jonathan Gilliam. This is The Experts. The truth has arrived. Peace, and we're out of here.